As we get nearer to the Epstein vote on the House vote on the Epstein files being released, President Trump is lashing out. He slammed Republicans backing the release, in his words, as weak, soft, and foolish. And he's now calling for the DOJ to investigate some high-profile figures and their ties to the late convicted sex offender. The president posted, quote, "I will be asking AG Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice, together with our great patriots at the FBI, to investigate Jeffrey Epstein's involvement and relationship with Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, Reid Hoffman, J.P. Morgan Chase, and many other people and institutions to determine what was going on with them and him." The Justice Department did not immediately respond to a request for comment. CNN has reached out to Clinton, Summers, and Hoffman. A spokesperson for J.P. Morgan Chase says the bank ended its relationship with Epstein years before his arrest on sex trafficking charges. Joining us now is Congressman Min. He's a Democrat representing California. Congressman, what do you think Trump is signaling in this post?
Well, first, thanks so much for having me, Brianna. And what we need to avoid having is the implication that this is a politically motivated investigation. And the problem with having Pam Bondi and the DOJ and Kash Patel go after people that Donald Trump is identifying is the same problem we're seeing right now with FHFA and them going after key critics of Donald Trump. I used to be an SEC enforcement attorney. I was a law professor. Now I'm a member of the House Oversight Committee. I've spent my career fighting for the rule of law. And I know this. We cannot have a rule of law that applies to some people but not others, that applies to supporters of a president but not critics of the president. We need a rule of law that applies equally to everybody. And that is why Democrats on the House Oversight Committee, we have fought so hard to ensure the release of the Epstein files in their entirety, because what we need is answers. We need to know how big this went, who was involved. Look, if Bill Clinton and Larry Summers, Reid Hoffman were involved, they should pay the consequences of that. But if Donald Trump or folks in his orbit were involved, we need to know that. We need to confirm that for ourselves. And the problem right now is that nobody trusts this Department of Justice to not be a partisan tool of Donald Trump.
So in 2023, J.P. Morgan Chase did pay almost $300 million to settle a class action lawsuit filed by Epstein survivors who alleged that the bank turned a blind eye to unusual cash transactions that they say enabled his scheme. There was no admission or denial of wrongdoing. But as you mentioned, you're a former SEC enforcement attorney. Could you get behind looking at a bank or financial institution like that when you look at a settlement like that?
Absolutely. And that is something that we on the Oversight Committee have been pushing for. I had the opportunity earlier this year in the summer to speak with a number of the survivors of Epstein's child sex trafficking ring and some of their attorneys. And the one thing that they just reiterated over and over, this thing was much bigger than many of us realize, and that we should be following the money. So I 100% support efforts to go into bank records. The thing is, a lot of these already exist, and we have been pushing for these for months now to try to get financial records from banks like J.P. Morgan Chase. The problem right now is that when Donald Trump authorizes Pam Bondi, directs her to go after his political critics, it looks like a partisan witch hunt, not a fair investigation. And so we're going to keep pushing ahead as House Oversight, particularly the Democrats, to try to get all the answers, to get the full release of the Epstein files, because we believe that a lot of answers are contained in them. We've seen some of the emails come out. There are many, many thousands, maybe millions of pages of documents that we're still looking for right now. But the ones we've seen so far are pretty damning about the scale and scope of what happened, the powerful people that were involved in this. And so we need those answers. I'm personally not going to trust Pam Bondi to conduct a fair investigation. So we on the House Oversight Committee will keep pushing for that.
Okay, I mean, if you don't trust Pam Bondi, it's not as if it just became known recently how massive this was, how prolific of an offender he was, right? Ghislaine Maxwell has been in prison for years. Jeffrey Epstein has been dead for years. The instances in question happened years ago. He first became on the radar in the state of Florida. They started investigating him in 2005. He had a plea deal before 2010. I mean, I hear what you're saying, that this should avoid being having the appearance of being politically motivated. But how is that possible when it's not like it's just now coming to everyone's attention that something was going on here?
Well, I think a lot of folks that I talk to are not aware of how broad this thing went, right? So when I talk to my constituents, they know that there was this horrible sex trafficking ring. But when you start mentioning some of the types of people involved, and I'll just give you one quick example. When we were talking to the attorneys, they told us that when they had interviewed some people close to Jeffrey Epstein, that they had learned that supposedly whenever Jeffrey Epstein was called by senior government officials from the governments of Saudi Arabia, Russia, or Israel, he would drop everything and meet with those officials. That at one point, a bodyguard for Jeffrey Epstein went out to Virginia to meet with someone who was very high up in the CIA to bring a note back to deliver to Jeffrey Epstein personally when he was under house arrest. That gives you a sense of like how powerful some of the people were that were involved with this. What we've seen over the last 7 weeks is Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, one of the most powerful people in the country, refusing to seat Adelita Grijalva so that maybe presumably she wouldn't be the 218th signature on this discharge petition. And then we heard, and you guys reported on this among others.
Can I stop you though real quick? I mean, couldn't the previous DOJ have looked into that? Like what you're talking about? The previous
I don't know how high this goes up. Yes, everybody should.
But the previous DOJ, and I think anyone who digs into this is going to be baffled at how previous DOJs, previous state officials, previous federal officials for multiple administrations didn't take a closer look at this. But this wasn't the first opportunity. I mean, can you admit that? This was not the first opportunity. This wasn't the first Democratic or Republican opportunity.
Yeah. No, I will say, I think this is, from what I can see, and I don't want to speak without having evidence, but it appears that there are people in both parties involved, that this went very high up. But there's a cover-up happening right now. And so we saw efforts last week when it looked like we were about to get the 218th signature on that discharge petition, forcing this thing to vote, that you guys reported that they brought Lauren Boebert into the Situation Room, a place that is reserved for high-level national security crises, to try to make the case to her to withdraw her signature. There have been serious efforts to stymie this, and those efforts go back in the past. I talked with Alex Acosta, the U.S. attorney. We interviewed him on the Oversight Committee, and he was the one who authorized that sweetheart deal. And clearly he, just interacting with him, he was lying to us in ways that were very obvious. There's a big cover-up happening, and we need to get to the answer. So I wasn't around in the DOJ. I wasn't an elected official when this happened. I just got elected to Congress and took office this year. And my job as someone who cares about the rule of law is that we need to get answers. We need to find justice for the survivors. We need transparency for the American people. And I honestly don't care if Democrats or Republicans are implicated, but we need a full and transparent investigation. And my concern is that we're not going to get that. And that is why the House is continuing to push forward with our efforts for a full release of the Epstein files.
I do want to mention something. There is some news here. Attorney General Pam Bondi is saying that prosecutors in New York will lead a federal investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's ties to high-profile figures. That's an announcement coming just hours after this social media post from the president instructing her to do so. Your reaction to this quick move by Bondi?
Not surprising. I think when Pam Bondi is told by Donald Trump, jump, she will always say how high. So that's very clearly not surprising. What would be surprising if this investigation was actually viewed legitimately as nonpartisan, and it went beyond just the handful of Democratic figures that Donald Trump called to be investigated. Donald Trump's name himself is in a lot of those Epstein files, as we've seen, and a lot of those emails. The question is, will Donald Trump be investigated as part of this? Or is there going to be one set of rules for Donald Trump's friends and supporters and another set for his critics?
Congressman Dave Min, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Brianna. Have a great day.
You too.